copy of Metro 2034 arrived here in record time. I ordered it from Polis only a few months ago. I wonder what it took to get it. Anyways, it's time to compare the novel Metro 2034, sequel to the novel Metro 2033, with the game Metro Last Light, sequel to the game Metro 2033. Spoilers for 2033 ahead, but I'll give a warning if I'm going to expose the broad strokes of 2034 or Last Light. Let's go. From the start, it's clear why the book is Metro 2034, and the game has the entirely less snappy subtitle, Last Light. They're entirely different stories with different groups of characters. Last Light, if you haven't played it, is about our man Artyom, having been inducted into the Rangers and now chilling out in their new military bunker they captured in 2033. But it turns out it was only an attempted genocide of the Dark Ones last time Artyom came through, and he sets out to make amends with, or, if he follows his orders, kill the young survivor. This being a video game, there are catastrophic complications, and he finds himself on the trail of an evil conspiracy to, what else, take over what remains of the world. Thrilling hijinks ensue, the player gets a sightseeing tour around Moscow, the girl at the end, and a bombastic ending. 2034, on the other hand, is about an old fart named Homer, no, not that one, a former Metro repairman who fancies himself the last writer in Moscow. He lives in Sebastopol Station, a discreet community that uses the heavy water flow of the area to generate most of the Metro's electricity on the sly. It's somehow more Spartan than the rest of the Metro, given that the doors must remain open to access the generators, and so they require 5.45 the same way some need oxygen. But the power business is booming thanks to Hansa, and it's a nice place to live. This all threatens to change when one day, communications go dark and the supply convoys stop coming. With ammo running low, our friend Hunter, who seems to be going incognito at the station and more than a little haunted, volunteers to recon the situation. Taking Homer as his guide, he finds that a station en route, Tula, has been mysteriously blockaded by the residents, and so they set out on a quest to get help from the ring stations to clear the obstruction. This is a different kind of story than Last Light, because while in general Metro is to Tom Clancy as Dark Souls is to Dragonlance, in the games a player usually finds themselves at least vaguely empowered with some kind of wasteland Gandalf as a guide. In 2034, the goal isn't to blow away the Dark Ones or the Communists to save lives, but to end an age-old threat and prevent more people from dying. The Dark Souls comparison was not made lightly. Metro as a whole is about the coming titanic yet futile struggles of the last few good men to only slow the oncoming of oblivion. But in 2034, when Wasteland Gandalf starts going off on one and the spookies and stereotype Ruskies are replaced with basic biology and attrition, it's brought to the forefront. That's not to say that 2034 had no influence on Last Light whatsoever. Pardon my assumption that more of my audience has played Last Light than read 2034. There are some visual and setting influences. In a part early on, our heroes are faced with a service tunnel clogged with spiderwebs, and after ineffectually cutting through a few meters, Homer sets a fire which instantly immolates the entire area in an implied spider creature. And while the nuclear spring isn't entirely mentioned, things are starting to flood, and it's clear that the surface is starting to become slightly more hospitable. Both 2034 and Last Light made more mention of the world outside the Metro than previously, and both made progress in female presence, upping the number of women in the Metro from none to 1. A large portion of 2034, in fact, is from the perspective of a 17-year-old girl named Sasha, who has a very unique perspective of someone born post-war. And while Anna, the Ranger sniper in Last Light, was far less important and had a hair too little development to suddenly have a shag with Artyom, they were both a refreshing change from the hyper-masculine atmosphere and fit in well enough. Yes, I admit, it is a short list of similarities, but here's the interesting part I've realized. Last Light and 2034 actually exist in the same timeline. Major spoiler alert for both here. In 2034, they acknowledge the timing of the events of 2033 by noting a dip in the supply of Exhibition T. This could be seen as placing the events of 2033 and Last Light in the early mid-2033 and 2034 respectively. The events of 2034 take place on the far side of the Metro from the hot zone in Last Light, so there wouldn't be any direct effect on each other, and they share very few characters. Setting aside a random guard rather confusingly named Artyom but with no relation, Ranger Commander Miller is the only person to appear in both stories. However, since by word of God the uncharacteristically happy ending of Last Light is canon, Miller should be alive but badly injured and wheelchair-bound, and when Hunter and Homer reach him in 2034, so he is. There is also one more solid parallel between the stories, which I would have said earlier, but spoilers. The bioweapon plague is the central element of both stories. While its characteristics are somewhat different in the novel as it infests Tula Station, it's clear from the way that the Rangers and some Red Line characters talk about it that there was another outbreak which was most likely the tests carried out in Last Light. This quite solidly places the 2034 story months after the happy ending of Last Light. Hunter and the better-informed Miller eagerly purging Tula with fire to prevent the plague from spreading might be a little odd given that the latter should know better, but the way it was hand-waved away in Last Light, it still fits. On that note, let's just talk about how great Hunter is for a moment. His plight is an incredible piece of character development. In the Metro books thus far, Hunter and his ranger associates have been depicted as invincible badasses, relaxed masters of humanity's new home. But it turns out that something damaged Hunter in 2033, and he went to Earth, hiding in Sevastopol Station, where at least he can be occupied by combat with non-humans. Once they get on the road and the story begins in earnest, however, Hunter snaps, and most of the rest of the tale is other characters trying to comfort him, or at least stem his bloodlust. It's an excellent subversion. It makes for a touching human story in a world that ends them regularly otherwise. I really like the tack that Mr. Glukowski is taking with these stories in a contained world. Western viewers might not know, but there's a frickin' enormous number of licensed Metro Universe books out there, set all around the world and written by local authors. It seems that stories where everyone in your city of residence dies horribly and some eke out a few more years eating rats and drinking their own piss are in demand. Therefore, it's good to see how much thought was put into the continuity of the Metro Universe between 2034 and Last Light, which I interpret as an attempt to expand the novels, merchandise, and upcoming movie into the English-speaking audience using the more widely popular games. If this is the plan, it's working, because after reading Metro 2034, all I want is more Metro. I know translation is difficult and expensive, but money awaits. In the meantime, we've got an excellent book that fits in with our good games. This is the Bellman signing off. Good hunting.